Okay, welcome to the strengths-based positive psych unit. Um, and this is one of those units that I think also reflects a lot of modern practice of psychotherapy. And positive psych is one of those. Um, so very briefly, before I get into that, we're gonna half of this is on strengths-based, and the other half is on positive psych, as if they're very different things. But in reality, I would say that a strengths-based approach to therapy um, is like it almost always goes hand in hand with a positive psychology sort of orientation and mindset. Um, I mean, maybe not 100% of the time, but they're very related, and they to be fair, they're also very related to solution focused therapy and on sort of ideological grounds, and so you might see that as you're going through, and you're like, this is very like solution focused because there's a lot of overlap. But I think there's also a lot of unique things in positive psych that are focused on a broader range of things, and I think it's important to understand that perspective to um, understand the world of psychology today. So, with that out of the way, there's sort of different things and sort of the same. Um, so this unit will talk about strengths-based first. Um, Basically, the idea of strengths-based therapy is that you instead of focusing on all of the negative things about a person, like this is how they like failed this thing, this is why, how they are like distorting their thoughts, and here's everything that's broken and wrong with them, and sort of bringing that up and rehashing it and discussing all the flaws that a person has with them. The idea is to focus on their like positive attributes, right, and to harness those as part of the solution. So, as the name implies, right, you uh, work hard on identifying what the client is really good at, some of the times that they've succeeded in their life, and trying to find redeeming qualities about them, and helping the client sort of believe in themselves and in some ways rewrite their story a little bit to see themselves in a new light, and to focus on their strengths and to use those strengths to overcome their weaknesses, right? So hopefully that sort of makes sense. Uh, Obviously, with an approach like that, it has to be extremely individual. You can't say, well, everybody has this strength, and that's CBT is very like, it doesn't matter who you are. That you can use very similar. I would say maybe that's unfair. But in a sense, you can use very similar, almost, and in fact even manualized treatments in CBT or in other similar therapies. That you're like, okay, I can help this person. The research says this is how to help them. And I think in strengths based, it's much more fluid and sort of up to interpretation, and very very much customized. So having a therapist who's very skilled always makes a difference, but especially here, I would say uh, it can make a big difference in the outcome. Sorry for that tangent there. Um, then you have, so we're going to talk a little bit about attention. We're going to talk about strength narratives. We'll talk about sort of a growth versus a fixed mindset, and then we'll talk about hope, and that sort of wraps up the strengths-based section. Um, and the unit will go into each of those. Um, yeah, and then positive psych is a little bit broader. So positive psych is also called like the psychology of happiness, or of well-being, of flourishing. Um, you'll hear these sort of vague words: well-being, flourishing, happiness, and you're sort of like, what does that mean? And they are a little hard to pin down sometimes. But basically, the idea is that instead of focusing on um, how to make people less depressed or how to make people less anxious, that you focus on how to make everyone more joyful and grateful and happier. So instead of just moving from -5 to 0, the idea is to move from 0 to +5, if that makes sense, on sort of an emotional scale. So positive psych isn't just for people with a diagnosis, it's for everyone to sort of try to move all of humanity towards a slightly happier place. Um, and so a lot of the things that it sort of deals with are less pathological, I would say, than some of the other approaches. but it also works in a therapeutic context. They talk a lot about flourishing, right? Like not just surviving, but flourishing, right? Thriving, doing really well. And so positive psych research looks into what makes someone succeed really, what makes someone flourish. What are the happiest people in the world? What are they doing? And how can we sort of incorporate that? So I think there's a lot of utility in that for clients and for each of us. And I don't know, I mean, I think that there's probably some takeaways in there, and hopefully it doesn't come across as uh, you know too much of an agenda or preachy in some way. But um, yeah, so the positive psych unit will talk a lot about gratitude, about flow experiences, about optimism, hope, mindfulness, which we've covered before, some self-compassion also covered before, forgiveness, some relationship stuff, a goal-setting technique called Whoop, and then some resilience and coping things. So that's how the unit works. Hopefully, that overview makes sense, and yeah, hopefully you enjoy the unit and get something out of it.